India is a historic partner of Russia, particularly in the realm of defense trade. Modi did not come out as forcefully against Russia's invasion of Ukraine as certainly the United States and Ukraine would have liked, has continued buying Russian oil, et cetera, et cetera. But while Rohan was away on vacation, Modi also went somewhere to Ukraine to see President Zelensky. And I think some people were wondering, does this signify a change on India's Russia policy? Does this signify a change between Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin? I have my own guess to what the answer is, but Rohan, you're the expert, so we're going to ask you.
I think we spoke a little while ago about Modi choosing his first port of call, at least for a bilateral visit after being reelected for the third time, and that was Moscow. Going and visiting, not just turning up to see Putin, but doing quite informal events with him, going around in a golf cart, being given Russia's highest civilian authority. This was not a reluctant visit in any sense of the term, and there were big questions raised about it, in part because India tends to do a neighborhood visit as its first choice. Indian prime ministers choose to do that. So it was a big deal that Modi chose to go visit Putin as his first port of call. It also, as expected, got criticism from the West, but again, not as much as if it had been other sets of leaders, given that India remains something of a swing state or a partner that both sides are seeking to court. There is yet the sense that the criticism touched home a little bit, and to some extent, Modi's decision to go late August to Kyiv is seen as part of that. So Modi turned up. He's the first Indian prime minister to visit Ukraine since the two countries established relations in the aftermath of the USSR. He turned up in Kiev, he met Zelensky, and he promised as a friend, I'm just looking at his words here, he said, "We chose to stay away from war, but that doesn't mean we are neutral. We are on the side of peace. As a friend, if there's any role that I can play, I would very much like to play that role towards peace." This is often the language India has used since the invasion of Ukraine, which it is not how India terms it. India has not described it as an invasion, although Modi did, again, reaffirm India's support for the respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, again, without blaming Russia or naming Russia in any sense while he was there. There's, I guess, two ways broadly of looking at it, and that's how people, many ways, but two broad themes. One is a set of folks who think that this is a capitulation to the West, that India was forced to do this essentially if it wanted to continue building its relationship with Western nations, particularly the US, after going and seeing Putin and the criticism that came, that India, in a sense, was shedding its strategic autonomy that it has developed over the years, and had to show the West that it would still do the things that at least pay lip service to those causes. The one that I'm a bit more partial to, and I think that Delhi tends to lean on a bit more, is genuinely a reassertion of one, Modi's ability to be friends with leaders across the globe. He makes a big show of this politically, domestically, as well as internationally, of being, his signature move when meeting leaders to hug them, and he has turned that into a way of domestic support in trying to convey to voters across the country that Modi is well respected around the world, and also to parlay that into a sense of India rising and India being an important player on a global stage, but at the same time keeping its space without having to fall into any camp. I don't think, as the question goes, I don't think there's any significant shift in India's policies. There's a Financial Times piece out this morning or yesterday about leaked documents that are suggesting India and Russia working together on joint ventures that, if not actively circumvent sanctions, at least seek to go after certain things that the West might at least consider eyebrow-raising decision-making. And I think India is quite clear that it will continue to remain close to Putin and Russia, and will not aggressively name Russia or call Putin out in any way. At the same time, it's probably a good thing that there are a few nations that are still able to speak to both sides. I think in the large scheme of things, that's probably a useful thing for whenever it happens. Still, I would pour a bit of water on the third set of commentators who think Modi truly is, the Vishwa Guru, being able to set an example for the world, and the one who will come up with a mediation that can solve this conflict. I don't see India being in that position either.
It was interesting at the outbreak of the war when Indian commentators were sort of like, well, actually, it's good because we can bring peace. And it's like, well, no, you can't, because if you could have, we would have peace. Like maybe at some point, yes. And I agreed, like diplomacy is good. It's good that there still are channels of communication, et cetera. But this idea that Modi in continuing to do business, like that India in continuing to do business with Russia that arguably undermines Ukraine's war effort is bringing the world closer to peace, I think is a bit farcical.
Yeah, it's exactly India remains a channel for the West to convey things, which I think that's where it's useful. We've seen that role played by other countries in different circumstances. Oman when it comes to dealing with Iran, for example, and those kinds of things are quite useful. Though the utility of that is heavily in the case of being quiet about it, and the current Indian government and
Right.
political party is not very in favor of that sort of thing, and so that comes up against what they're likely to be able to do. Though I imagine the folks in the foreign ministry and so on, the external affairs ministry, are doing things, hopefully trying to be not too much in the spotlight on things, whether that pleases the West or not. But yeah, I think any genuine belief that India would mediate and solve this is a misreading of India's power at this moment.